Commander Sarah rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the holographic displays surrounding her command chair aboard the deep space research vessel Prometheus. 3 years into their mission studying the Outer Rim territories, the crew had settled into a comfortable routine of cataloging star systems and monitoring subspace communications. The galaxy seemed peaceful, almost boring compared to the adventure stories that had inspired her to join the Terran Space Navy. The Prometheus drifted silently through the 442 system, its massive sensor arrays drinking in data from the twin suns and their collection of rocky planets. Dr. Martinez, the chief, had been particularly excited about this system after detecting unusual energy signatures from the fourth planet. What they found exceeded all expectations. The planet, designated 442D, harbored a thriving ecosystem with signs of primitive civilization. Initial scans revealed a species the crew nicknamed the due to their bear-like appearance. These beings had developed basic tools and lived in small tribal communities scattered across vast forest continents. According to all protocols, first contact was strictly forbidden with pre-civilizations. But fate had other plans. Lieutenant Jake was manning the communications station during the night shift when an impossible signal reached the ship. The transmission originated from the planet's surface, specifically from a settlement near the northern polar region. What made it impossible was that the signal was transmitted on a frequency they shouldn't have been able to access with their primitive technology. "Commander to the bridge immediately," his voice crackled over the intercom, barely containing his excitement and confusion. Sarah arrived on the bridge within minutes, her uniform hastily thrown over her sleep clothes. "Report, Lieutenant." "Ma'am, we're receiving a directed transmission from the planet's surface. The signal is, well, it's meant for us specifically. It's using our own communication protocols." Sarah's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. Our stealth systems are active, and these beings don't have the technology to detect us, let alone communicate with us." Pulled up the transmission data on the main. "The signal is coming from coordinates that correspond to a small village. Population roughly 200 individuals, but Commander, there's something else. The transmission isn't random static or accidental interference. It's structured, purposeful." Doctor, the ship's linguist and cultural specialist, burst onto the bridge still wearing her laboratory coat. "Commander, I've been analyzing the signal pattern. It's definitely artificial, but it doesn't match any known communication methods we've observed. This is sophisticated beyond their apparent technological level." Sarah studied the waveform patterns dancing across her screen. After 15 years in space, she had developed an instinct for when situations were about to become complicated. This had all the hallmarks of a career-defining crisis. "Can you decode it?" she asked. "I've been trying for the past hour," replied, her fingers dancing across her tablet. "The mathematical structure is elegant, almost like they're using our own translation algorithms against us. It's as if someone down there understands exactly how our computers process language." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. "Open a secure channel to Earth Command. We need to report this immediately." But before could establish the connection, the transmission from the planet changed. The random-seeming patterns suddenly resolved into something that made everyone on the bridge stop breathing. "Hello, humans of the ship Prometheus. My name is, and I am what you call. Please do not fear. I am only a cub, barely past my second season, but I have knowledge that your people need. Great danger comes from the void between stars, and you are not prepared." The message repeated 3 times before falling silent. The bridge crew stood frozen, staring at the translation that appeared in perfect standard English on their screens. "How is this possible?" whispered Dr. Martinez, who had arrived just in time to hear the transmission. "Our observations show they're barely using metal tools. They hunt with spears and live in wooden structures." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. First contact protocols were clear. No communication with pre-civilizations under any circumstances. The Prime Directive existed for good reasons. But this situation, every assumption those protocols were based on. "Commander," said quietly, "there's more. The signal is incredibly sophisticated. It's not just using our communication protocols, it's adapting them in real time. Whoever sent this understands our technology better than some of our own engineers." Doctor was frantically taking notes on her tablet. The linguistic patterns are fascinating. This is using grammatical structures that shouldn't exist in a primitive language, yet somehow they're perfectly translated into standard English. It's as if the translation is happening at a quantum level. Sarah walked to the main, showing the planet below. The northern continent looked peaceful in the soft light of the twin suns. Somewhere down there, a young had just shattered everything humanity thought it knew about first contact. "What did he mean by great danger from the void?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, the ship's long-range sensors began screaming warnings. Chief Petty Officer Williams at the sensor station looked up with confusion and growing alarm. "Commander, I'm detecting massive subspace distortions at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts approaching at impossible speeds." "Impossible speeds how?" Sarah demanded. "Ma'am, they're exceeding light speed without using any recognizable FTL technology. Our computers can't even calculate their exact velocity. They're simply arriving." The main screen shifted to show long-range sensor data. Dozens of objects were materializing at the system's edge, their energy signatures unlike anything in the Terran database. They were massive, each one easily 10 times the size of the Prometheus. "Are they ships?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Unknown, Commander. They don't match any known configurations. The energy patterns are organic somehow, like living things rather than constructed vessels." Another transmission crackled through from the planet's surface. This time, Young's voice carried an urgency that transcended species barriers. "Honored humans, they have found you as we knew they would. The Devourers follow the scent of intelligence across the void. They consume civilizations, absorbing knowledge and technology before moving on to their next feeding ground. Your ship's presence has drawn them here, just as we calculated it would." Sarah felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. "Calculate? What does that mean?" As if responding to her unspoken question, continued. "We have watched your people for many cycles, learning your ways through the electromagnetic whispers that escape your worlds. We know of your courage, your determination, your refusal to yield even when facing impossible odds. This is why we chose to break our silence. The Devourers have never faced a species like yours." "Commander," Williams called out, his voice tight with fear, "the unknown contacts have changed course. They're heading directly for us." Dr. Martinez moved to Sarah's side, his face pale but determined. "Commander, I recommend we prepare for immediate departure. Whatever's coming, we're not equipped for a confrontation." But Sarah found herself thinking about the young's words. How had a primitive civilization been monitoring human electromagnetic emissions? How had they learned to communicate using Terran protocols? And most importantly, why had they chosen now to reveal themselves? "Belay that order," she said firmly. "Open a channel to the planet. I want to speak with this directly." "Ma'am," protested, "first contact protocols are already broken," Sarah interrupted. "They contacted us first, and if this young cub is right about these Devourers, we need all the intelligence we can get." The communication channel opened with a soft chime. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would echo through history. "This is Commander Sarah of the Terran vessel Prometheus. We receive your warning and are grateful for it, but we need to understand how you know about these Devourers." The response came immediately, as if the young had been waiting by his communication device. "Commander, your reputation precedes you even here. We know of your victory at the battle of your rescue of the colonists on Titan Station. We have been preparing for this day for many seasons." Sarah's blood ran cold. The battle had been classified. The details of that engagement were known only to senior command staff. How could a primitive alien on a distant planet know about it? "The Devourers destroyed our 300 cycles ago," continued. "But some of us escaped. We have been hiding, learning, preparing for their return. We knew they would follow the expansion of intelligence across the galaxy, and we knew humanity's rapid growth would eventually draw their attention." "Your doctor whispered, but you're clearly native to this planet. Our biological scans confirm it." "We are native now," replied, somehow hearing her whispered comment across the vast distance. "We have spent generations adapting, changing, becoming part of this world while we waited for the right moment. We needed a species strong enough and stubborn enough to stand against the Devourers. We needed humanity." The long-range sensors chimed again. Williams looked up from his station with growing alarm. Commander, the unknown contacts have accelerated. At their current speed, they'll reach us in approximately 6 hours. Sarah stared at the tactical display showing the approaching threats. Dozens of massive objects converging on their position, each one radiating energy signatures that understanding. Her crew of 50 scientists and support staff was about to face something that had destroyed entire civilizations. She said into the communication device, "What do you know about these devourers? How do we fight them?" "That is what we have been preparing to teach you, Commander, but time grows short. The devourers do not simply destroy, they consume. They absorb the knowledge and technology of their victims, growing stronger with each conquest. They have fed on 1,000 civilizations across the galaxy." "Then how do we stop something like that?" "By being something they have never encountered before, by being human." Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Commander, with respect, we need more than cryptic answers. If we're facing an extinction-level threat, we need concrete information." "The good doctor speaks wisdom," replied. "Very well. The Devourers are not machines, though they use technology beyond your current understanding. They are a collective consciousness that spreads across multiple vessels. They consume not just resources or territory, but the very essence of intelligence itself. Each civilization they absorb makes them smarter, more adaptable, more dangerous." "How many civilizations?" Sarah asked, dreading the answer. "We estimate they have absorbed over 3,000 species in their journey across this galaxy alone. Each conquest teaches them new ways to hunt, new technologies to exploit, new weaknesses to target. They should be unstoppable." "Should be." "They have never encountered a species that grows stronger under pressure. They have never faced beings who refuse to surrender even when victory seems impossible. They have never met humans." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "You're talking about using humanity as bait, as a weapon against these things." "I speak of humanity doing what it has always done, fighting when others would surrender, finding hope where others see only despair, creating unity from chaos." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Williams cleared his throat nervously. "Commander, should I send that priority message to Earth Command now?" Sarah considered the question carefully. Earth was dozens of light years away. Even with quantum entanglement communication, it would take hours to explain the situation and days to mount any kind of response. By then, the Devourers would either be defeated or the Prometheus would be nothing more than cosmic debris. "Negative," she decided. "We maintain communication silence for now. If these Devourers can track intelligence, we don't want to lead them to Earth." "But Commander," Dr. Martinez protested, "we need backup, we need the fleet." "The fleet can't get here in time. And according to our young friend here, calling for help might just be painting a target on the entire Sol system." She turned to address the communication pickup directly. "You said you've been preparing for this day. What exactly have you prepared?" "We have learned everything we could about human nature, human tactics, human technology. We have studied every battle your people have fought, every victory against impossible odds. We know that humans do not simply fight to win, they fight to protect what they love." "That's true enough," Sarah admitted. "But love won't stop technology that can absorb entire civilizations." "No," agreed, "but it will inspire the creativity and determination necessary to find a solution. Commander, may I ask you a personal question?" Sarah blinked in surprise. "I suppose." "Why did you join the space service? What drove a young human to leave the safety of Earth and venture into the unknown?" The question caught her off guard. She found herself remembering her childhood on Luna Colony, watching the stars through the observation dome and dreaming of exploration. "I wanted to see what was out there. I wanted to know if we were alone." "And what have you learned in your travels?" "That we're not alone, that the universe is full of wonders and dangers we never imagined." "And knowing the dangers, would you still have made the same choice?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "Yes." "This is why we chose your species, Commander. This is why we believe you can succeed where others have failed. The Devourers have consumed thousands of civilizations, but they have never encountered one that actively seeks out danger for the sake of discovery and protection of others." Williams called out from his station, interrupting the philosophical moment. "Commander, the unknowns are entering the outer system. I'm getting better resolution on their configurations now." The main screen filled with images that easy description. The approaching vessels looked like a hybrid of organic and mechanical systems, their surfaces rippling with energy patterns that seemed almost alive. They moved in perfect coordination, like a school of predatory fish circling their prey. Fascinating, Doctor breathed. The structural integrity of those ships shouldn't be possible. It's like they're held together by force of will rather than conventional physics. In a sense, they are, replied. The Devourers long ago transcended the limitations of purely physical technology. They reshape matter and energy through collective consciousness. This is why traditional weapons have proven useless against them. Then what do you propose? Sarah asked. I propose we give you something the Devourers have never faced before. A challenge they cannot simply absorb and overcome through accumulated knowledge. Which is unpredictability, chaos, the uniquely human ability to succeed through improvisation and desperate innovation. Sarah studied the approaching fleet on her tactical display. 53 massive vessels, each one radiating power that dwarfed her single research ship. By any rational analysis, this was a hopeless situation. Which, she reflected, made it exactly the kind of challenge humans had been overcoming for. All right, she said, her voice taking on the steel that had earned her a command at the age of 35. Tell me what you have in mind. First, we must bring you to the planet's surface. There are preparations we have made that cannot be transmitted through communication channels. Technologies we have developed specifically for this confrontation. We can't land the Prometheus, protested. She's not designed for atmospheric entry. Not the ship, clarified. You, Commander, and a small team. We need minds that can think like humans, not computers that follow programming. Sarah considered the request, landing on an alien planet to meet with beings who claim to have been monitoring humanity for generations. Everything about it violated protocol. Everything about it was dangerous and unprecedented. Everything about it felt right. Dr. Martinez, Dr. Lieutenant, she said, nomming her selections. Prepare for planetary insertion. We're going to meet our new allies face to face. As her team prepared for departure, Sarah took one last look at the approaching Devourer fleet. Somewhere in the vastness of space, an ancient enemy was closing in on what they believed would be another easy conquest. They had no way of knowing they were about to encounter something entirely new in their thousands of years of experience. They were about to meet humanity. And according to a young cub who somehow knew more about human nature than most humans did themselves, that was going to make all the difference. The shuttle descent through 442D's atmosphere was unlike anything Commander had experienced. Instead of the usual buffeting and heat buildup, their craft glided smoothly through what should have been turbulent air currents. Dr. Martinez, monitoring the environmental systems, looked up from his readings with confusion. Commander, the atmospheric readings don't match our orbital surveys. It's like the planet itself is, guiding us down. Elaborate, Sarah requested, gripping her restraints as she watched the alien landscape unfold below them. The air density patterns are shifting around us. Wind currents that should be pushing us off course are instead creating a corridor directly to our destination. It's impossible. Doctor leaned forward from her position behind the pilot's seat. Perhaps our hosts are more technologically advanced than they've revealed. The ability to manipulate atmospheric conditions on a planetary scale would require incredible sophistication. The shuttle touched down in a clearing surrounded by massive trees that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. The forest was alive with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed gently through the bark and leaves, creating an otherworldly light show that bathed everything in soft blue and green hues. As the engines powered down, Sarah could see movement among the trees. Contact, whispered, pointing toward the forest edge. A group of emerged from between the massive tree trunks, moving with a grace that belied their bear-like appearance. They stood roughly 8 feet tall, covered in thick fur that shimmered with the same bioluminescent patterns as the surrounding forest. Their faces combined the features of terrestrial bears with something distinctly more intelligent, their eyes holding depths that spoke of ancient wisdom. At the front of the group stood a smaller figure, barely 5 feet tall, who could only be. Unlike the others, his fur was still the lighter brown of youth, and his movements carried the energetic curiosity that transcended species barriers. Honored humans, his voice carried clearly across the clearing despite the shuttle's closed hatch. Welcome to, we have prepared long for this meeting. Sarah activated the shuttle's external communication system. "Thank you for the welcome. We're honored to meet you and your people in person." "The honor is mutual, Commander. Your species' reputation for courage and innovation has reached even our remote world. Please join us. There is much to show you and little time to accomplish what must be done." The human team performed their final equipment checks and prepared to disembark. Each carried a full complement of scientific instruments along with standard sidearms, though Sarah suspected conventional weapons would prove useless against the approaching threat. As the shuttle hatch opened, the first thing that struck them was the air itself. It was rich with oxygen and carried scents that were both alien and strangely familiar. The bioluminescent patterns in the vegetation pulsed more rapidly, as if responding to their presence. "Fascinating," Dr. Martinez muttered, taking readings with his portable analyzer. "The atmospheric composition is perfect for human respiration, but there are trace elements here I've never encountered. Some of them shouldn't be stable under normal conditions." Approached them with the confident stride of someone far older than his apparent youth suggested. Up close, his eyes held a depth of knowledge that made Sarah momentarily question which species should be considered more advanced. "Commander," he said, extending a massive paw in what was clearly a learned gesture of human greeting, "I am of the Northern Grove Collective. These are my podmates Thera and Elder." Sarah shook the offered paw, nodding the careful control of strength in the young's grip. "This is Dr. Martinez, our cultural specialist, and Lieutenant, our communications expert." "Dr. Martinez," said, turning to address the scientist directly, "your work on symbiotic ecosystem development was particularly insightful. Your paper on the terraforming project helped us understand how human scientific methodology could be adapted to our purposes." Martinez blinked in surprise. "You've read my research papers, but that work was published only 6 months ago, and it was in a restricted scientific journal." "We have been monitoring human information networks for quite some time." Thera spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of greater age and experience. "Your species' habit of documenting and sharing knowledge makes learning about your capabilities relatively straightforward." "That's a concerning security breach," muttered under his breath. Elder, whose fur had turned silver with age, stepped forward. "Young, we mean no harm by our observations. We have been protecting your species from threats you did not yet know existed. Monitoring your development was necessary to determine when you would be ready for the challenges ahead." "Ready for what exactly?" Sarah asked. "Ready to save the galaxy," replied simply. "But first, you must understand what we truly are and what the Devourers represent." They led them deeper into the forest along paths that seemed to form naturally beneath their feet. The bioluminescent patterns in the vegetation grew more complex as they walked, creating intricate displays that resembled circuit patterns more than random biological phenomena. "Your forest," Doctor observed, "it's not entirely natural, is it?" "A perceptive question," replied. "What you see is the result of 3 centuries of careful cultivation. We have learned to work with the planet's natural systems rather than imposing our will upon them." "But you're not originally from this planet," Sarah said. It wasn't really a question. "Correct," Elder confirmed. "Our true was called Prime. It was located in what you now know as the Cygnus arm of the galaxy. The Devourers consumed it when I was barely past my first molting." They emerged into a vast clearing where structures that were part architecture and part living organism rose toward the canopy. Buildings grew from the forest floor like massive trees, their walls breathing with organic rhythms while displaying complex technological interfaces. "This is impressive," Dr. Martinez said, scanning the structures with his instruments. "You've achieved a perfect balance between biological and technological systems. Your integration of organic computing substrates is decades ahead of anything we've developed." "Centuries of necessity breed innovation," Thera explained. "When you lose everything to an overwhelming enemy, you learn to think differently about survival." Led them toward the largest of the bioarchitectural structures. "This is our strategic center. Inside, we have been modeling the coming confrontation for many years." The interior of the building was a seamless blend of living walls that pulsed with data streams and technological displays that showed real-time information about the approaching Devourer fleet. Holographic projections filled the air with tactical information that made even the most advanced human systems look primitive. How is this possible? Breathed, staring at the displays. This level of computing power would require facilities the size of cities. We do not build our computers, explained. We grow them. The distinction allows for capabilities that purely mechanical systems cannot achieve. Sarah studied the tactical displays showing the Devourer fleet. The enemy vessels had spread out across the outer system and were moving in complex patterns that suggested they were scanning every asteroid and planetary body. "They're looking for something," she observed. "They are looking for us," Elder confirmed. "The Devourers do not simply attack randomly. They hunt intelligence itself, drawn by the electromagnetic signatures of advanced thought and technology." "But your ship triggered their arrival," added, addressing Sarah directly. "The quantum resonance patterns of human technology are unique in the galaxy. Your FTL drives create ripples in spacetime that the Devourers can detect from enormous distances." "So we led them here," Dr. Martinez said grimly. "We're responsible for endangering your people." "You are responsible for creating the opportunity we have waited for," Thera corrected. "Without human involvement, our chance of success would be negligible." Sarah moved closer to the tactical displays. "Explain your plan." Manipulated the holographic controls with practiced ease, and the display zoomed in to show detailed schematics of the Devourer vessels. The Devourers operate through collective consciousness. Their ships are not independent units, but extensions of a single, vast intelligence. This gives them perfect coordination and shared knowledge, but it also creates a vulnerability. "What kind of vulnerability?" Sarah asked. "They have become dependent on predictability. Every civilization they have consumed has followed logical patterns of response. They analyze defensive capabilities, predict countermeasures, and adapt accordingly. Their success rate is perfect because they have never encountered a species that operates outside of logical parameters." Doctor leaned forward with interest. "You're talking about chaos theory, introducing random variables they can't predict or plan for." "More than that," said, activating another set of displays. "We have been studying human military history extensively. Your species has a unique talent for victory through what you call creative desperation. The Battle of Thermopylae, the defense of Stalingrad, the miracle at Dunkirk. Humans repeatedly succeed by doing the impossible when faced with overwhelming odds." Looked skeptical. "That's military mythology more than tactical doctrine. Those victories had rational explanations." "Did they?" Elder asked. "Or did human intuition and determination create solutions that purely logical analysis would have deemed impossible?" The displays shifted to show detailed analyses of human military engagements throughout history. They had compiled data on every major conflict, from ancient battles to recent space skirmishes, with particular attention to situations where humans had overcome superior numbers or technology. "Your species fights differently when protecting something precious," explained. "The Devourers have consumed civilizations that surrendered when defeat became mathematically certain. They have absorbed species that negotiated when victory seemed impossible. But they have never faced beings who fight harder when the odds grow worse." Sarah studied the enemy fleet positions. "What specifically are you proposing?" "We propose to give humanity what it needs most," Thera said. "A cause worth fighting for and impossible odds to overcome. The Devourers expect us to either flee or attempt a defensive stand," continued. "Instead, we will attack them." "Attack them?" His voice cracked slightly. "With what? Our research vessel isn't even armed." "With the most powerful weapon in the galaxy," replied. "Human ingenuity combined with biotechnology." The displays shifted again, showing schematics of organic technologies that seemed to bridge the gap between biology and engineering. Weapons that grew rather than being manufactured, defensive systems that adapted in real time, propulsion technologies that worked in harmony with natural forces rather than overwhelming them. "We can retrofit your shuttle with our biotechnology in a matter of hours," Elder explained. "The combination of human tactical thinking and our adaptive systems may create something the Devourers cannot predict or counter." Dr. Martinez was taking detailed scans of the organic technology displays. "This is incredible. You've achieved controlled evolution at the mechanical level. Your systems actually adapt and improve during operation. The necessity of fighting an enemy that absorbs and counters all static defenses, Thera said simply. We learn to create technology that changes faster than it can be analyzed. Sarah walked around the tactical display, studying the enemy positions from every angle. You're asking us to take on 53 massive vessels with a single modified shuttle. We are asking you to do what humans do best, corrected, to find a way to win when victory should be impossible. And if we fail, then the galaxy falls to the devourers as it would have eventually regardless. But if we succeed, we save billions of lives across hundreds of worlds, Elder completed, including your own Earth. Sarah considered the proposal. Everything about it was insane. A single shuttle against a fleet that had destroyed thousands of civilizations. Technology they barely understood combined with tactics they would have to invent on the fly. No backup, no support, no margin for error. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation that brought out the best in human nature. How long do we have? She asked. The Devourers will complete their system scan in approximately 4 hours, replied. After that, they will converge on this planet. That's not much time for retrofitting and planning. It is enough, said with confidence that seemed to transcend his apparent youth. We have been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries. The technology is ready, the tactics have been modeled extensively, and the outcome has been calculated with as much precision as possible when dealing with human unpredictability. Doctor looked up from her cultural analysis instruments. There's something I don't understand. If you've been monitoring humanity for so long, why reveal yourselves now? Why not wait until we were more technologically advanced? Because advancement is not what we need from humanity, Thera explained. We need the specific qualities that emerge when humans face impossible odds with insufficient resources. Too much advancement, too much preparation, and you would lose the essential element that makes victory possible. Which is, Sarah asked. The willingness to attempt the impossible because the alternative is unthinkable, Elder replied. The Devourers have consumed species with technology far beyond your current level. They have absorbed civilizations with weapons that could destroy solar systems. But they have never faced a species that grows more determined as the odds grow worse. Was studying the fleet positions on the tactical display. Commander, even with their organic technology, this looks like suicide. Perhaps, Sarah agreed, but it's suicide with a purpose. And if these Devourers really have consumed thousands of civilizations, then eventually they'll find Earth anyway. She turned to address the directly. What do you need from us? Commitment, replied immediately. The biotechnology we will provide requires a complete mental interface with the user. It responds to intent and emotion as much as conscious thought. Without absolute commitment to victory, the systems will not function properly. And trust, added. Our technology will seem alien and unpredictable by human standards. You must trust it to respond correctly even when logic suggests otherwise. Finally, Elder said, you must embrace the chaos that makes humanity unique. Do not try to fight this battle like a conventional engagement. Let your intuition guide you into decisions that the Devourers cannot predict or prepare for. Sarah looked at each of her team members. Dr. Martinez was practically vibrating with scientific excitement at the prospect of working with biotechnology decades ahead of human development. Doctor was already taking notes on the cultural implications of the alliance they were forming. Looked terrified but determined, the expression of a soldier accepting an impossible mission. There's one more thing, she said to the. If we do this, if we somehow pull off this impossible victory, what happens afterward? What happens to the alliance between our species? Exchanged glances with his elders before answering. That will be for humanity to decide, Commander. We have hidden for centuries, waiting for this moment. If we survive the coming battle, we will finally be free to rejoin the galactic community. Whether we do so as equals, as teachers, or as students will depend on what both our species choose. But first, Thera interrupted, we must ensure there is an afterward. The Devourer fleet will not wait for our philosophical discussions. Sarah nodded decisively. Then let's get to work. Show us this biotechnology and help us prepare to do the impossible. As they began activating systems throughout the strategic center, Sarah felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. But this time it was different. This time, she wasn't just responsible for her crew or her mission. She was responsible for stopping a threat that could consume entire civilizations. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity was given impossible odds and a cause worth dying for. The Devourers had feasted on thousands of species, but they had never encountered the stubborn, chaotic, beautifully unpredictable nature of human determination. They were about to learn why that made all the difference. The shuttle transformation was unlike anything in human engineering experience. Dr. Martinez watched in fascination as guided organic conduits through the vessel's hull, the living materials seamlessly integrating with human technology in ways that should have been impossible. The neural pathways are establishing connection with your ship's computer systems, Thera explained as tendrils of bioluminescent material wound themselves around the shuttle's control interfaces. Our biotechnology doesn't replace your systems, it enhances them by adding adaptive capability. Sarah watched nervously as the organic modifications spread throughout her shuttle. The walls now pulsed with a gentle rhythm that matched her heartbeat, and the control panels had developed an almost intuitive responsiveness to touch. "How do we know it won't take over completely?" asked, voicing the concern they all shared. Who had been overseeing the integration process looked up from his work. "Because it cannot function without conscious human direction. Our biotechnology evolved specifically to work in partnership with intelligent beings, not to replace them." Doctor ran her hands along a section of modified hull plating. "The material feels warm, almost alive. Are we looking at some form of engineered organism?" "In a sense," replied, "but it's more accurate to say that the boundary between organism and technology became meaningless for our people long ago. We learned to cultivate solutions rather than manufacture them." The shuttle's main display screen had evolved into something that provided three-dimensional tactical awareness in ways that conventional human technology couldn't match. Instead of simply showing enemy positions, it projected emotional resonance patterns that indicated the Devourer's mental states and intentions. "Incredible," Dr. Martinez breathed. "You're not just tracking their ships, you're monitoring their thought patterns." "The Devourers operate through collective consciousness," Elder explained. "Their individual vessels are more like neurons in a vast brain than independent units. By monitoring the electrical patterns of their communications, we can predict their tactical decisions before they complete the thought process." Sarah studied the evolving display. The Devourer fleet was spreading out in a search pattern that covered the entire system, but their movements showed a growing focus on the inner planets. "They know we're here," she observed. "They know something is here," corrected. "But they cannot precisely locate us yet. The biotechnology modifications to your shuttle include stealth capabilities that work on multiple levels: electronic, thermal, and psychic." Psychic looked skeptical. "The Devourers hunt intelligence itself," Thera explained. "They can sense the electromagnetic patterns of advanced thought across interstellar distances. Our modifications include neural dampening fields that mask those patterns." The shuttle shuddered slightly as the final biotechnology integration completed itself. The vessel looked essentially the same from the outside, but Sarah could feel the difference in how it responded to her presence. The ship felt alive, aware, eager. "The bonding process is complete," announced. "Commander, please take the pilot's position. The biotechnology needs to establish a direct interface with the primary operator." Sarah settled into the pilot's seat and immediately gasped as tendrils of warm, organic material extended from the chair to make contact with her hands and the back of her neck. For a moment, her consciousness expanded beyond her individual awareness to encompass the entire shuttle. She could feel the ship's systems as extensions of her own body. The engines hummed with potential energy that she could direct with thought alone. The weapons systems, which had been hastily installed during the retrofit, felt like natural extensions of her will. Most remarkably, she could sense the emotional states of her crew members through the ship's biotechnology network. "Extraordinary," she whispered, flexing her fingers and watching the ship's systems respond to her smallest intention. "The interface will take some adjustment," warned. "Human minds are more chaotic than what our technology typically works with, but that chaos is exactly what makes this partnership potentially successful." Dr. Martinez was monitoring the energy readings from his science station. "Commander, Our power output has increased by 300%, but I'm not detecting any additional energy sources. The biotechnology draws power from multiple dimensions, Elder explained. It accesses energy patterns that exist between the layers of reality itself. That's impossible according to human physics, protested. Human physics is still developing, Thera replied gently. There are aspects of reality that your species has not yet discovered. The tactical display suddenly flared with new information as the Devourer fleet changed formation. Instead of continuing their systematic search pattern, the enemy vessels were converging on the inner system. They've detected something, Sarah said, her enhanced awareness allowing her to interpret the display's emotional resonance patterns. They're excited, anticipatory. They sense human intelligence, confirmed. Your ship's quantum signature is unique in this galaxy. Even with our stealth modifications, they know something unprecedented is present. Doctor looked up from her analysis. Are we ready for this? I mean, really ready? We're talking about engaging an enemy that has never been defeated. No, Elder replied honestly. You are not ready by conventional standards, but readiness is not what will determine the outcome of this battle. Then what will? Sarah asked. Whether humanity can embrace its essential nature when faced with absolute necessity, explained. The Devourers have consumed civilizations that were more advanced, better prepared, and more numerous than your current forces. But they have never faced a species that treats impossible odds as an invitation to innovate. The shuttle's enhanced sensors detected movement in the outer system. The Devourer fleet was accelerating toward their position, their massive vessels moving with coordination that spoke of shared consciousness across vast distances. Time to make a choice, Commander, said. We can hide and hope they pass us by, though the probability of successful concealment is less than 12%. Or we can engage them on our terms while we still have the advantage of surprise. Sarah felt the biotechnology responding to her emotional state, the ship's systems aligning themselves with her growing determination. Through the neural interface, she could sense her crew's readiness despite their fear. Martinez was excited by the scientific challenge, was fascinated by the cultural implications, was terrified but absolutely loyal. What exactly are you proposing as our tactical approach? She asked. Manipulated the tactical display to show a complex three-dimensional battle plan. The Devourers expect either flight or a defensive stand. Instead, we attack their command vessel directly. A single modified shuttle penetrating to the heart of their formation and targeting their collective consciousness nexus. That's suicide, stated flatly. By conventional analysis, yes, Thera agreed. But conventional analysis does not account for human unpredictability combined with adaptive biotechnology. The biotechnology will continue evolving throughout the engagement, explained. It responds to threat patterns by developing countermeasures in real time. The Devourer's usual tactic of absorbing and adapting to enemy technology becomes useless when facing technology that adapts faster than they can analyze it. Sarah studied the proposed attack vector. It required threading their shuttle through the defensive formations of 53 massive vessels, each one capable of destroying them with a single hit. The margin for error was essentially zero. What happens if we actually manage to damage their command vessel? She asked. The collective consciousness network becomes disrupted, Elder replied. Individual vessels would be forced to operate independently without the shared knowledge and coordination that makes them invincible. They would become vulnerable to conventional tactics, added, but only if the attack succeeds completely. A partial disruption would simply teach them how to counter our approach. Dr. Martinez was running calculations on his modified science station. Commander, the energy requirements for this plan are enormous. Even with the biotechnology enhancements, we'll be operating at maximum capacity throughout the entire engagement. Which brings us to the critical element, Thera said, addressing Sarah directly. The biotechnology interface will amplify not just your conscious commands, but your emotional state as well. Fear, doubt, or hesitation will be transmitted directly to the ship systems. You're saying we have to believe we can win, Sarah realized. More than that, corrected. You have to want victory more than you fear death. The biotechnology responds to the strength of human will, but only when that will is absolutely committed. Sarah closed her eyes and felt the shuttle's systems humming around her. Through the neural interface, she could sense the vast complexity of the modifications they had made. Weapons that could adapt their targeting parameters during flight. Defensive systems that could restructure themselves to counter incoming attacks. Propulsion technology that could alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. All of it dependent on her ability to maintain unwavering determination in the face of overwhelming odds. "There's something else," she said, opening her eyes to look at her allies. "If we succeed, if we somehow pull this off, the Devourers will know that humanity exists. They'll eventually find Earth." "They will find Earth anyway," Elder replied. "Your species' expansion rate guarantees eventual contact. The question is whether they find a humanity that has already proven itself capable of victory against impossible odds." "Besides," added, "success here will provide your people with biotechnology that can be adapted for planetary defense. The alliance between our species could create defensive capabilities the Devourers have never encountered." The tactical display showed the enemy fleet entering the middle system. At their current rate of approach, contact would occur within the hour. "Decision time, Commander," said quietly. Sarah felt the weight of the choice settling on her shoulders. Not just for her crew, not just for but potentially for every intelligent species in the galaxy. The Devourers had been unstoppable but they had never faced the particular combination of human determination and biotechnology. She thought about her childhood on Luna Colony, watching the stars and dreaming of discovery. She thought about the scientists and explorers throughout human history who had pushed into the unknown despite impossible risks. She thought about the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat even when logic demanded surrender. "Dr. Martinez," she said, her voice taking on the command authority that had carried her through a dozen impossible situations. "Prepare all scientific equipment for combat data collection. If we're going to die doing this, we're at least going to learn something useful in the process." "Doctor, I want continuous cultural analysis throughout the engagement. Document everything about how human and approaches to warfare combine. This could be the foundation for a permanent alliance." "Lieutenant, establish emergency communication protocols. If we succeed but don't survive, I want Earth to know what happened here and how to prepare for future contact." She turned to address the directly. "Thera, Elder, you've waited 3 centuries for this moment. You've studied humanity and prepared for this alliance. Now it's time to find out if your faith in human nature was justified." "Commander," said solemnly, "we have observed your species for generations. We have seen humans overcome obstacles that should have been insurmountable. We have faith not just in human nature, but in your personal leadership." Sarah felt the biotechnology responding to her rising determination, the ship systems aligning themselves with her tactical awareness. Through the neural interface, she could sense the approaching Devourer fleet with a clarity that transcended conventional sensors. "Then let's go save the galaxy," she said, engaging the enhanced propulsion systems. The shuttle lifted off from the forest clearing with a grace that belied its small size. The biotechnology modifications had transformed it into something that was part spacecraft, part living creature, and part extension of human will. As they climbed towards space, Sarah could feel the ship's eagerness for the coming battle. "Devourer fleet is adjusting course," reported. "They've detected our launch." "Good," Sarah replied, surprising everyone including herself. "Let them know we're coming. The last thing they'll expect is a direct assault." The shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere and immediately engaged its stealth systems. On the tactical display, they became invisible to conventional sensors, but Sarah could feel the biotechnology working to mask their presence across multiple dimensions of detection. "Approaching the outer edge of their formation," Dr. Martinez announced. "Energy readings from the Devourer vessels are unlike anything in our database." "They're beautiful," Doctor whispered, staring at the massive alien ships through the enhanced viewports. She was right. The Devourer vessels were works of art as much as instruments of war. Their hulls flowed like liquid metal while maintaining structural integrity that allowed them to manipulate local space-time. Energy patterns cascaded across their surfaces in displays that spoke of intelligence beyond conventional understanding. "Remember," Thera's voice came through the communication system, "beauty is one of their most effective weapons. They absorb the aesthetic achievements of conquered civilizations along with their knowledge and technology. Which explains why they're so visually impressive, Sarah realized. They've incorporated the artistic sensibilities of thousands of species. But they have never incorporated human aesthetics, pointed out. They have never absorbed a species that finds beauty in impossible odds and hopeless causes. Sarah felt the truth of that statement resonate through the biotechnology interface. Humanity's greatest achievements had always come from embracing challenges that other species would have avoided. Now they were about to discover whether that same impulse could succeed against the ultimate challenge. "Beginning attack approach," she announced, directing the shuttle toward the heart of the enemy formation. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The approach through the Devourer formation every tactical principle Sarah had learned during her military training. Instead of maintaining maximum distance and using ranged weapons, they were diving directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. The biotechnology-enhanced shuttle responded to her intentions with an agility that made conventional physics seem like gentle suggestions rather than immutable laws. "First contact in 30 seconds, announced, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Lead vessels are moving to intercept." Through the neural interface, Sarah could feel the Devourer consciousness probing at the edges of their stealth field. The enemy intelligence was vast, ancient, and utterly confident in its ability to predict and counter any threat. That confidence, she realized, might be their greatest weakness. "Dr. Martinez, what are you reading from their targeting systems?" she asked. "Incredible, Commander. They're not just analyzing our ship, they're trying to analyze us. I'm detecting focused scans attempting to map human neural patterns." "They want to understand how we think," Doctor added from her cultural analysis station. "They're trying to add human consciousness to their collective knowledge base even before destroying us." "Let them try," Sarah said grimly. Through the biotechnology interface, she could feel the ship's defensive systems adapting to the enemy scans. Instead of blocking the probes, the technology was feeding them carefully crafted false information. "The biotechnology is creating false neural patterns," Thera's voice came through the communication link from the planet below. "The Devourers will receive data that makes human thinking appear more predictable than it actually is." The first enemy vessel opened fire with weapons that tore holes in space itself. Sarah felt the attack coming through her enhanced awareness and guided the shuttle through evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible for such a small craft. The biotechnology responded to her intentions by temporarily altering local gravity fields, allowing them to change direction in ways that violated conventional momentum. "How are we doing that?" gasped as they slipped between energy beams that could have vaporized a battleship. "The biotechnology is rewriting physics on a localized scale," Dr. Martinez replied, his scientific training warring with the evidence of his own instruments. "It's creating temporary alterations in the fundamental forces." "Less impossible than it sounds," his voice carried clearly despite the battle chaos around them. "Reality is more flexible than most species realize. The Devourers know this, which is why their weapons can manipulate space-time. But they have never encountered technology that adapts the manipulation techniques in real time." More enemy vessels joined the attack as Sarah guided them deeper into the formation. The air around the shuttle filled with energy discharges that painted space in colors that had no names in human language. Each attack was more sophisticated than the last, as the Devourer collective consciousness learned from their defensive maneuvers. "They're adapting," Sarah observed, feeling the increasing pressure through the neural interface. "Each shot is getting closer." "Exactly as we hoped," replied. "The more they adapt to counter your current approach, the more committed they become to a single tactical framework." Sarah understood immediately. The Devourer's greatest strength, their ability to learn and adapt, was also making them predictable. By focusing their collective intelligence on countering her current tactics, they were creating blind spots that could be exploited. "Dr. Martinez, prepare the primary weapon systems," she ordered. "We're going to do something they won't see coming." "What's that, Commander?" "We're going to stop being evasive and attack them head-on." The shuttle's enhanced weapon systems were unlike anything in human military experience. Instead of firing energy beams or projectiles, they launched packets of organized chaos, quantum disturbances that disrupted the target's ability to maintain structural coherence. Sarah targeted the nearest Devourer vessel and fired. The chaos packet struck its hull and began spreading like a virus, causing sections of the alien ship to forget how to maintain their atomic bonds. The vessel didn't explode so much as simply decide to stop being a ship. Impossible, breathed. We just destroyed something 10 times our size with a single shot. Not destroyed, Elder corrected. Convinced it to deconstruct itself. The weapon exploits the connection between consciousness and matter that the Devourers use to maintain their vessels. The enemy response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of vessels turned their full attention to the tiny shuttle that had just eliminated one of their number. Space around them filled with attacks that could have sterilized planets. But something unexpected happened. Instead of overwhelming the shuttle's defenses, the concentrated fire began interfering with itself. The Devourer's weapons were so precisely calibrated that they couldn't function effectively when multiple units targeted the same small area. "They're creating a destructive interference pattern," Dr. Martinez announced with wonder. "Their weapons are canceling each other out." Sarah felt a moment of fierce joy through the neural interface. This was exactly the kind of problem that human military thinking excelled at exploiting. All ships, concentrate fire on the smallest possible target, use their precision against them. "Commander," said carefully, "you're giving orders to ships that aren't there." "Am I?" Sarah replied, her consciousness expanded through the biotechnology interface. She could feel other presences in the battle space, not physical ships, but quantum echoes of human determination that the biotechnology was somehow making real. The tactical display showed phantom contacts appearing throughout the Devourer formation, sensor ghosts that registered as hostile targets but couldn't be physically located. The enemy fleet began targeting these false contacts, further dispersing their coordinated fire. "The biotechnology is creating quantum duplicates of human tactical thinking," explained with evident amazement. "It's projecting Commander strategic consciousness across multiple probability spaces simultaneously." "I didn't know that was possible," Thera admitted. "Neither did we," Elder replied. "Human consciousness appears to interact with our biotechnology in ways we never anticipated." Sarah guided them deeper into the enemy formation, the shuttle dancing between massive vessels that were now firing at targets that existed only as mathematical possibilities. The chaos was exactly what she had hoped for. The Devourer's collective intelligence was struggling to process tactical data that made no logical sense. "Approaching the command vessel," Doctor announced. "The largest ship in the formation, energy readings are off the charts." The Devourer command ship was a work of terrible beauty that stretched for kilometers through space. Its hull pulsed with the absorbed knowledge of 1,000 civilizations, and Sarah could feel the weight of its collective consciousness pressing against her mind through the neural interface. "Warning, Commander," his voice carried urgent concern. "The command ship is attempting direct mental contact. Do not allow it to establish a connection." "Too late," Sarah replied, feeling the alien intelligence probing at her thoughts. But instead of the overwhelming assault she expected, she encountered something surprising. The Devourer collective consciousness was curious about her. Not hostile, not predatory, simply fascinated by the chaotic patterns of human thinking it was encountering for the first time. "You are unusual," a voice spoke directly into her mind. It carried the accumulated weight of millions of years and thousands of absorbed civilizations. "Your tactical approaches defy logical analysis." "Good," Sarah replied through the mental link. "Logic is overrated. We have consumed species that valued courage. We have absorbed civilizations that prized determination. But we have never encountered beings that treat impossible odds as an opportunity for creativity." "Maybe you've been eating the wrong civilizations," Sarah suggested, guiding the shuttle toward the command ship's central structure. "Perhaps," the voice agreed thoughtfully. "You interest us, human. We would learn from you before adding your knowledge to our collective. How about instead, we teach you something you've never learned before? What could you possibly teach us that we have not already absorbed from 1,000 other species?" Sarah smiled grimly as she prepared the shuttle's most powerful weapon, a chaos packet modified with human creativity and biotechnology. How to lose. She fired directly into the command ship's consciousness nexus. The weapon struck home and began its work, but instead of simply disrupting the target's structural coherence, it introduced something far more dangerous to a collective intelligence: individuality. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Devourer collective consciousness began fragmenting as individual components remembered what it felt like to think for themselves. Across the entire fleet, vessels stopped coordinating with each other as their crews experienced the terrifying freedom of independent thought. Fascinating, the voice in Sarah's mind said, though now it sounded like dozens of different individuals speaking at once. We had forgotten what it felt like to disagree with ourselves. That's the first step toward real intelligence, Sarah replied, questioning your own assumptions. The battle space transformed as the Devourer fleet devolved into chaos. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination began firing on each other as different factions emerged within the collective consciousness. Some vessels attempted to flee, others tried to reestablish the collective link, and a few simply stopped responding to any commands at all. The collective consciousness is fragmenting, Dr. Martinez reported with excitement. They're losing their ability to function as a unified force. But for how long, asked, can we make this permanent? Through the mental link, Sarah could feel the various Devourer factions struggling to understand their new independence. Some were terrified of isolation after millions of years of collective thought. Others were exhilarated by the possibility of individual choice. A few were angry at being forced into unwanted freedom. The fragmentation will stabilize, she realized. They'll become individuals, but they'll remember being collective. Some will choose to form new collectives, others will remain independent. They'll become something entirely new. Is that victory? Doctor asked. It's better than victory, Elder's voice carried satisfaction across the communication link. It's transformation. The Devourers will no longer be a threat because they will no longer be Devourers. Sarah guided the shuttle away from the command ship as its hull began reconfiguring itself into smaller, independent vessels. Throughout the formation, the massive Devourer ships were breaking apart into components sized for individual crews rather than collective consciousness. Commander, Thera's voice carried awe, you have accomplished something we never imagined possible. You haven't just defeated the Devourers, you freed them. The biotechnology, added, it responded to human concepts of individual freedom and dignity. It weaponized your core values. Sarah felt a strange sense of completion through the neural interface. The battle was over, but the victory felt different from any military engagement she had ever experienced. Instead of destroying an enemy, they had liberated it from its own nature. Dr. Martinez, she said, are you getting readings on the fragmented vessels? Yes, Commander. They're establishing independent flight patterns. Some are leaving the system entirely, others are forming small groups. A few are actually approaching us with what appear to be peaceful intentions. They want to learn, the voice in Sarah's mind explained, though now it clearly belonged to a single individual rather than a collective. For the first time in millions of years, we have questions instead of certainties. We wish to understand how consciousness can exist without unity. That, Sarah replied, is going to be a very interesting conversation. As the shuttle headed back toward the planet's surface, she watched the former Devourer fleet dispersing throughout the system. Some vessels were already experimenting with new hull configurations as their crews discovered the joy of independent creativity. Others were attempting to form voluntary collectives based on shared interests rather than forced unity. The galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place, Doctor observed. And humanity, added, just became the species that taught the ultimate predators how to be individuals. Sarah smiled as the neural interface gradually disengaged, returning her consciousness to the purely human perspective she had known before the battle. But something had changed permanently. She could still sense the connections between all conscious beings, the quantum threads that linked intelligence across space and time. She said into the communication system, I think your people just gave humanity something more valuable than technology. What is that, Commander? You gave us proof that consciousness is the most powerful force in the universe, and that when different forms of consciousness work together, they can accomplish the impossible. Indeed, replied. And now both our species will have the opportunity to explore what becomes possible when the impossible becomes routine. The shuttle touched down in the forest clearing where their adventure had begun just hours earlier. But the galaxy they returned to was fundamentally different from the one they had left. The greatest threat to galactic civilization had been transformed into its greatest opportunity for growth and diversity. And at the center of it all was the alliance between a species that refused to accept defeat and a species that had waited 3 centuries for the right moment to emerge from hiding. The real adventure, Sarah realized, was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of, Commander Sarah stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station, watching ships from a dozen different species dock at the orbital facility. The galaxy had indeed become a much more interesting place. What had once been devourer vessels now bore the modifications and insignia of independent crews who had chosen to explore rather than consume. Some had retained their original organic hulls, but added artistic embellishments that reflected their newfound individuality. Others had completely reconstructed themselves into forms that would have been unrecognizable to their collective consciousness origins. "Remarkable transformation," Doctor commented as she joined Sarah at the observation window. "The psychological profiles we've developed show that former devourer individuals are adapting to independence faster than we predicted." Sarah nodded, watching a particularly artistic vessel maneuver toward the docking bay. Its hull had been restructured to resemble a massive flower, with energy patterns flowing through translucent petals that served as both decoration and sensor arrays. "That's the Quantum Blossom," she said. "Captain was one of the first to establish independent contact after the fragmentation. Their crew has become master artists, creating beauty from quantum mathematics." "And the probability storm over there," Doctor pointed to another modified vessel. "Captain Nexus and their team have become explorers. They've discovered 3 new habitable worlds just this month." Dr. Martinez approached from the research section, carrying a tablet filled with the latest scientific data. "Commander, the preliminary reports from the Biotechnology Integration Project are extraordinary. Human engineers working with are achieving breakthroughs we wouldn't have imagined possible." "Show me," Sarah requested. Martinez activated a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of hybrid technology. "We've successfully integrated organic computing substrates with quantum processors. The result is computational power that can adapt and evolve in real time. But more importantly, it responds to conscious intent in ways that make the boundary between user and system practically meaningless." "Like the neural interface during the battle," Sarah realized. "Exactly, but refined and standardized for widespread use. We're calling it Consciousness-Integrated Technology, or CIT. Every device becomes an extension of the user's will and creativity." Lieutenant joined them from the communications center, his face bright with excitement. "Commander, we've just received a fascinating transmission from the Outer Rim territories. Remember Captain, the former devourer who chose to explore the galactic edge? The one who was fascinated by ancient ruins. That's the one. They've discovered something incredible. Evidence of a previous galactic civilization that apparently faced the devourers millions of years ago and chose a very different solution." Sarah's attention was immediately captured. Different how? Instead of fighting or being consumed, they transcended physical existence entirely. "This team has found installations that appear to be consciousness storage and transmission devices on a galactic scale." Doctor leaned forward with interest. "Are we talking about digital immortality?" "More than that," replied, pulling up the transmitted data. "According to the preliminary analysis, this ancient civilization found a way to exist as pure consciousness while still being able to interact with physical reality when needed." Sarah studied the data with growing fascination. "Have they made contact with any of these transcended beings?" "Not yet, but believes they're being watched. Their instruments detect observation patterns that suggest conscious attention without physical presence." "That could explain a lot," Dr. Martinez mused. "If there are transcended civilizations observing galactic development, it would clarify how they knew so much about human nature and the coming threat." As if summoned by the mention of his name, his voice came through the station's communication system. "Commander, we have prepared the ceremonial space for the Alliance founding assembly. Representatives from 43 species have confirmed attendance." Sarah smiled at the young's continued formality despite their friendship. "Thank you, we'll be there shortly." The Alliance Founding Assembly was being held in Harmony Station's largest meeting space, a vast chamber that combined human architectural principles with biotechnology and artistic elements contributed by former Devourer individuals. The result was a space that literally breathed with life while maintaining the structural integrity needed for cooperation. As they walked toward the assembly chamber, Sarah reflected on how rapidly everything had changed. The alliance that had begun with desperate necessity had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary cooperation between species that respected each other's essential nature rather than trying to impose uniformity. The chamber was already filled with representatives from across the galaxy, stood beside former Devourer individuals who had chosen new forms and new names. Human explorers conversed with crystalline beings who communicated through harmonic resonance. Energy-based life forms flickered in containment fields while maintaining spirited discussions with matter-based species about the nature of existence. Ladies and entities, Sarah began as she took the podium. 6 months ago, the galaxy faced what seemed like an unstoppable threat. The Devourers had consumed thousands of civilizations and showed no signs of stopping. The assembly fell silent, giving her their complete attention. Today, we gather not as conquered species or victorious armies, but as partners in the greatest experiment in galactic history. We have proven that consciousness itself is the ultimate force in the universe, and that when different forms of consciousness work together, they can accomplish what none could achieve alone. Elder stepped forward from the delegation. Commander speaks truth that resonates across all frequencies of existence. The alliance we form today is not merely political or military. It is philosophical. We are choosing to explore what becomes possible when difference is celebrated rather than eliminated. Captain of the Quantum Blossom spoke next, their voice carrying harmonics that had not existed during their collective consciousness days. For millions of years, we consumed difference in the name of unity. Now we create beauty from the interaction of separate perspectives. The mathematics of diversity produces more elegant solutions than the repetition of sameness. Doctor stepped to a secondary podium. Our cultural analysis indicates that every species brings unique problem-solving approaches to the alliance. Humans excel at improvisation under pressure, master the integration of organic and technological systems. Former Devourer individuals contribute vast knowledge accumulated over millions of years, but now filtered through individual creativity rather than collective absorption. The combination, added Captain Nexus from their exploration vessel, creates capabilities that transcend the sum of individual contributions. We are discovering solutions to problems we did not know existed. Sarah nodded approvingly. Which brings us to the formal foundation of the Galactic Consciousness Alliance. This is not a government or empire. It is a voluntary network of species committed to exploring the potential of cooperative consciousness. Activated a biotechnology display that showed the proposed alliance structure. Instead of hierarchical command systems, it resembled a living network where information and resources flowed based on need and capability rather than arbitrary authority. The Alliance Charter, he explained, establishes principles rather than laws. We commit to defending the right of all conscious beings to develop according to their essential nature. We agree to share knowledge freely while respecting each species' choice about how to apply that knowledge. And we pledge to face unknown challenges together rather than allowing fear to drive us apart. But what about practical governance? Asked Crystalline Ambassador L through harmonic resonance that was translated into standard by the Chamber's systems. How do we make decisions when 43 different species have 43 different approaches to logic? We don't try to reach logical consensus, Sarah replied. We use human chaos theory combined with biotechnology and former Devourer analytical capabilities to find solutions that work for everyone even when they don't make sense to anyone. The assembly erupted in what passed for laughter across multiple species. Sounds, harmonics, and energy patterns that conveyed amusement despite their diversity. Stepped forward with a communication device. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the transcended civilization that Captain discovered. They're requesting permission to address the assembly. Sarah exchanged glances with Elder and opened the channel. The chamber filled with a presence that was unmistakably conscious, but bore no physical form. When the entity spoke, its words appeared directly in the minds of every being present. translated perfectly into whatever form of communication they best understood. Greetings, builders of the new alliance. We have observed your development with great interest and considerable hope. You're the civilization that transcended to avoid the devourers, Sarah said. It wasn't really a question. One of them, yes. We chose transcendence because we believed it was the only way to preserve consciousness in the face of absolute consumption. But we have watched you accomplish something we thought impossible, transformation of the threat itself rather than escape from it. Elder spoke with reverence. How long?